Matt Lenihan, Boxing Social, in association with William Hill and Empire Fight Store. Delighted to be joined by Eddie Hearn. We're here at Matchroom HQ down in Brentwood. Had the pleasure of interviewing you outside, I think, in that blazing heat for fight camp, but in the office today. How's things?
Yeah, good. We got the barbecue for September 30th, and just thought I'd do a few interviews in here before we melt outside. And looking forward to a big show September 30th, and next week in Tijuana is the start of a run, one weekend off till December, probably 23rd. So, trying to take a few breaths before we hit the plane and start a really busy schedule.
It is a hectic schedule. I just want to come on to that. I saw in a recent interview you did with Coogan, you always talked about not being in the game too long and retiring at a certain age, but you said you think you probably go on past 50. And do you worry, when you see boxers and fighters that can't leave this game alone, is this going to be a problem for you?
Yeah, I thought to myself the other day when we was at the Lin, helping them reopen, that gave me a great feeling, and not just while we were there, but the whole day and the following day, and just nice to have some positivity in the sport. And I think it made me realise that I will never leave boxing. I will always, I think my legacy as a promoter is one thing, but I would love to create a legacy that actually left a mark for the grassroots of the game, because that's where my true passion lies. I love doing big events, I love seeing fighters achieve, I love making money, but nothing really makes me feel like seeing kids be active through boxing and enjoying themselves and having dreams and loving the sport. And it doesn't matter if I'm at Brentwood ABC with my daughter, or at the Lin, or at Adcock's in Birmingham, or wherever we go. It really makes me feel good. And anything that makes you feel good, you should try and do as much as possible. The boxing business gives me unbelievable highs, gives me a lot of aggravation, winds me up, sometimes makes me angry, sometimes makes me, sometimes it gets personal. But when you think about it, how lucky we all are that, one, we're even here breathing, and secondly, we're working in the sport of boxing. I won't be in the boxing business forever, but I will tell you that having had 3 weeks of no shows, I cannot wait to start this schedule. I'm more hungry than ever for the business. I'm more hungry than ever for the sport. I'm more hungry than ever for our fighters. And whilst I feel like that, I'll always keep going. But I just sometimes look at that older generation, and I admire them, Frank and Bob. But I really do admire them. But I just don't know whether I want to live my life like that forever. Because it can piss you off, and it can make you angry, and it can get you depressed, and it can, all those things. But the upsides are fantastic. And as you get a little bit older, like I had a kid in here today who's 18, turning pro with his dad. And I had Jimmy Sains in here the other day with his dad, who I grew up with. And it's like, those kind of journeys are what I really enjoy. The high-end stuff, the bullshit, the politics, the interviews, he said, she said, and obviously the drug testing, all that kind of stuff. It takes away from the fun, but it's part of the business and the sport, and it's all stuff you have to deal with.
Well, you mentioned, obviously, the schedule coming up just at the start of that. Last night, I saw Eubank Foster, Rocky Hernandez announced in Cancun, a great fight. Is the plan for that, obviously, winner fight Joe Cordina, providing he gets past his test? I believe I've heard rumblings out in Monaco.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Joe will fight in Monaco on November 4th. Time this comes out, we would have actually released that card. He'll fight Edward Vasquez, who fought Ray Ford, and that fight could have gone either way. He's had a couple of big wins since. A good fight for Joe. Eubank Foster against Rocky Hernandez is a fucking great fight, and we're taking it to Cancun in Mexico. It's going to be wild. We want the winner of that fight to fight Joe Cordina outdoors in Cardiff in the spring, and obviously Joe's got to win first, but that's a really good fight for the schedule. And we want to start making those big unification fights for Joe. We feel like he's the best in the division, but that fight is a firecracker, October 28th.
Yeah, it's an absolute banger. I want to come on to some comments you made a couple of months ago. When you talk about Anthony Joshua, you've always said, look, this fight with Deontay Wilder's locked in for December. Now, things change all the time. We're seeing it with the Saudi movement. Can you just give a bit of an update on that as to why that's not locked in, why we don't have a date announced for December?
Yeah, I mean, we agreed terms. Firstly, the fight was originally planned for December, and then we were told the fight's going to take place in January. We agreed terms, we agreed the numbers for that fight. We awaited the contract, which obviously didn't come. There was a down tools moment when we took the fight in August, where everyone said, look, let's talk after the fight. And obviously you see a change in movement in Saudi Arabia with Skills Challenge and other entities and stuff like that. So from our point of view, having spoken to Shelley Finkel and Deontay Wilder, we're all agreed with Saudi Arabia, but until they move forward contractually, the fight's not happening. It's a lot of money, so we expect it to take its time, but we also wait for effectively the new strategy of boxing in Saudi Arabia. You know, when you look at the fights, do they want to make Fury Usyk and Wilder Joshua on the same night? Do they just want to make Wilder Joshua? Do they want to see what happens with Fury? Do they want to make Fury Joshua? I don't know, but from our side, everything's agreed. But until we have that confirmation, we can't move forward. And there will come a time in the next couple of weeks where AJ will say, I want to fight. And he may end up fighting in December. And he may end up fighting Tyson Fury in January, February, March, whenever it is. At this point, I can't really give you the answers other than we're all agreed from our side, both fighters.
So basically, the ball's in their court, because with a lot of the punditry and people was talking about Anthony Joshua's last performance, it was a feeling that maybe he isn't ready for a Wilder next. But from your point of view, it's a case of we're ready to do that next.
I feel like if he's not ready now, he may never be ready. You know, he's a two-time world heavyweight champion. He's fought everybody. He's ready for. You're going to see the best of AJ against the better opposition. But I don't want it to just be a balls in your court. But ultimately, we have agreed the fight. But there is a change in movement over there, and I guess we need to let that settle. But we can't wait too long before we pull the trigger, because he wants to stay active and he's enjoying the activity.
Will we see an Andy Ruiz trilogy or someone of that nature? Because after an Usyk or a Tyson Fury, where do you sort of go to? Are you looking at a...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point. Is there a Ruiz trilogy? Maybe. Is it a Filip Hrgovic? You know, is it a Zhilei Zhang if he beats Joe Joyce or Joe Joyce? I don't know. Certainly needs to be a step up from Hellenius. But AJ's kind of like, the money's not the be all and end all. It's, excuse me, it's more the activity and the enjoyment of being in camp and fighting. But you will see the best of AJ against the better opposition.
I want to come on to some comments yesterday made by Tyson Fury. You've often alluded to the fact that one day he says he fights for free, the next minute he wants the most money. Well, yesterday he sort of nailed his clothes to the mast in a way. I saw him in an interview with Sky Sports, and he basically said, look, I didn't come back here to secure this, that and the other. It was to provide a future for my kids, my grandkids. I've regained a belt, you know, and now I'm securing a bag. You've always alluded to that Tyson Fury is very money orientated. Do you believe with them comments a fight with Alexander Usyk will happen at some point, providing all goes to plan?
Everything's going to come down to what it means to him to secure a legacy as a great. I feel like every fighter should want to be undisputed. Like that. Why, when you start the game, you know, I had a kid in here, like I said to you the other day, all he wants to do is be undisputed. Every kid that turns pro wants to win every belt, wants to be undisputed. And Fury is a favourite to be able to do it. It's not like, you know, he's a favourite in the Usyk fight. It's a tough fight, but he also, I saw comments from him that says he couldn't care less about undisputed. And that's each to their own.
You've always said that.
Yeah, but if that's the truth, and you don't want to go down as the great, like if he beats Usyk and AJ, he is an absolute modern day great. Like he's up there with Lennox Lewis, you know, Tyson. I hate comparing to Muhammad Ali, but you know, of that level, right? But sometimes that doesn't matter to people. So you can't criticise him because something doesn't matter to him that matters to someone else. For boxing, we just want him to fight the best fights in boxing. I say that as a fan. It's no business of mine. But I also understand, look, he's fighting Ngannou. It's a big event. He's making a load of money against a guy who can't fight. I don't blame it. But I don't like the, you know, I'm not fighting Uzi. He got knocked out by Dubois. AJ's a gym sweeper. I'm never fighting him. I only want the big boys. Well, who's the big boys? I don't understand. Is there anyone else that we're missing? Unless it's just exhibitions that you're after. But I hope, and I've been around Tyson Fury enough to know how much he loves boxing, and he's a student of the game. I hope he puts a value on being a great. And in that respect, we'll want to fight Usyk, and we'll want to fight AJ as well. And I wouldn't be surprised, like the biggest fight out there financially for Fury is Fury AJ. So therefore, if it is just about the money, we'll make that fight next. Or do you care about undisputed or don't? Because there's not as much money in the Usyk fight. And he may view that as a tougher fight. I just don't, you never know with him. But, I think that each to their own. If he cares about legacy, if he cares about being a great, he'll take those fights. If he just cares about the money, whoever pays the most, he's in.
You talk about being a great. In his defence, he will say, well, I've won every belt in boxing from the ground up. I've not had the tag of undisputed, but I left the sport with all the belts. I came back, won the other belt I never had. Who does he have to beat? Because when you stack up the resume...
To be a modern day great, you have to beat all the elite fighters of your era.
Is AJ a modern day great?
Absolutely. I'm not saying, whether he's a modern day great or not, you cannot say he's not an elite heavyweight. He's a two-time world champion. Like, if you beat Wilder, if you beat Klitschko, if you beat Usyk and you beat AJ, you are absolutely, unquestionably the greatest fighter of this era. And he may be. I think he's a brilliant fighter, right? So, but at the same time, you can't... everyone thinks... Look at...
If both careers stop now...
Fury's resume, right? And who he's beaten. The two big wins in his career, Vladimir Klitschko and Deontay Wilder. Yeah. Beyond that, he hasn't really beaten any elite heavyweights, right? Now, you might say, and I'm not even comparing him to AJ. Forget comparing him to AJ. We're just talking about if he's already done it, if he's already a modern day great. I don't feel that with his resume, he can go down as a modern day great of the generations of, you're going to talk about in the same breath as the others. He has the ability to do it. That's the frustrating thing. So all he has to do is fight Usyk. And listen, if he fights Usyk and doesn't fight AJ, he's become undisputed. That could go down as... But I just feel like if he goes through everybody in that division, he got like... Imagine beating Vladimir Klitschko, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk. Yeah. That's it. You've completed it. And I just... And it's not like the money shit for those fights. The money's massive. So, I don't know. But again, I've watched, I hate to keep plugging it, but I've watched Home of the Furies.
It's good, isn't it?
It's really good. And it's, I think the whole family's actually very likeable. And sometimes he said this and she said that, but you can't help like them. I love sport and I love to see greats. And I just think he could be a great. He's a favourite to beat Usyk and he's a favourite to beat AJ. And if there's masses of money, which there is, dust them off. And then go, I've done it. But it doesn't work like that for everybody. Not everybody is bothered about being a great or being undisputed, and maybe he's not. So, and you can't blame him for that. That's just... But I'm not so sure. I think he is. I think, like I said, he's a student of the game. I think he wants to be a great. Whether he says he does or not, I think he wants to be. And he's a brilliant fighter.
Well, let's see how it pans out. But there's some big fights in the offing, hopefully, if he does... Touchwood get past Ngannou and then...
You'll be all right.
Yeah. I think we all do. I've got to come on to these comments. I know everyone seems to do this back and forth nonsense, but I want to address them with you because it was an interview that I think Lewis did with Frank Warren. Frank Warren said, Conor Benn, in relation to this VADA carry on, Conor Benn's second test that he tested positive for, there's never been a hearing, and if you're a big advocate of drug-free sport, why hasn't there been a hearing? Or is it more bullshit that you've put out there to smother the fact that your fighter has never appeared before a governing body regarding to explaining how this got into his system? What do you make of these comments?
Okay, well, firstly, drug-free sport weren't even involved in this process, so I don't know what he's talking about there. Secondly, the WBC had a hearing for him. Obviously, the first test was WBC, clean boxing program. They did actually address two of the tests in that. It was discussed. Granted, the WBC were handling their test. Then he was asked to go before UCAD, which he did. He won the case, and now they're appealing. So you can't say he's not going through any process at all, and he's not looking to get out of dealing with any single process. Again, some people try and talk about that stuff rather than saying, but can we just talk about your fights for a minute? Why aren't you testing? I mean, he's very lucky that he has a fight coming up, Joe Joyce against Zhilei Zhang, that Joyce requested VADA testing, that he's had to do. But every other Frank Warren show, like 99% of them, don't have VADA testing and don't have any testing. Beluto is a great example. And again, I hate to single him out because I'm sure he's a clean fighter. He wasn't tested for that fight, in the process of that fight. That's dangerous for your fighters. You should be protecting your fighters. So, yeah, I mean, he's still talking about Conor Benn a year and a half on. But ultimately, I just hope that promoters now will follow suit and test. I think there is a big problem. One of the problems is making sure there is testing. We're overcoming that problem. We've got every fight that we're doing now has VADA testing, costing us an absolute fortune, is what it is. The other problem is what happens when there's an adverse finding. Not even jurisdiction, but just the process of who deals with what, right? So it's like UCAD, who are very slow, who are under-resourced, and this is the other thing. Everybody admits that UCAD are under-resourced and they don't test anywhere near enough. It's not their fault, by the way, because that's what the board pay them. Yet everyone's now going, oh no, UCAD's great. Like, you know, Simon Jordan, don't need VADA, UCAD's great. I'm being told that Chris Eubank Jr. got tested once in camp, and that was 2 days before the fight. That's absolutely scandalous. So you can't say that's enough, because you want testing, don't you? But what you also want is when a fighter has an adverse finding, that, you know, Joe Cusimano the other day, that was a New York State Athletic Commission test. They wrote to us and they said, we've had an adverse finding, there's a hearing on set date, these are the things that could happen, we'll let you know. I thought, wow, finally. But you've got to have the balls to pick that up and deal with a disciplinary matter. Some people are scared because fighters, teams can be litigious and they want, you know, but they have to fight for their career. So, yeah, Frank's comment, drug-free sport weren't involved in Conor Benn.
I think he was saying if you want a drug-free sport. I don't think it was more. I know he wasn't. He was referring to if you want a drug-free sport.
Yeah, if you want a drug-free sport, you need to increase testing and you need to actually pay for it. So do it. But at the same time, you do need a process to follow. Conor Benn is going through all the processes that are being asked of him. It's not his fault that the process isn't a process that Frank Warren likes. These are the processes that are in boxing that he's been asked to go through. He's been through all of those. He's been reinstated in the rankings. He's had his suspension lifted. Now there's another appeal. He's got to go through that process. So when he wins that appeal, there'll be someone else still moaning. So there is definitely a problem of dealing with an adverse finding. But let's just make sure we're testing fighters, because that's the first step to overcome.
In terms of his next move, I spoke to Conor after the Eubank fight and he said, look, I'll fight him next. I know I'm supposed to do those talks of a September date in America, but he goes, I'll fight him next, 160, whatever. Talks with Kalle Sauerland, how advanced are they? What's going on and how quickly we're going to get the ball rolling? Because he's still got answers for this appeal to go through.
Yeah, so we had a meeting with Kalle 2 days ago. He wants the fight. Eubank wants the fight. Ben wants the fight. We want the fight. And I'm sure that fight will happen. Where it will happen, we need to get to the bottom of. Look, Conor's ready to go into that fight now. He's been sparring like an absolute animal. And he wants to fight Eubank straight off the bat, no warm-up fight. I think Tony Sims would see a benefit to... he hasn't boxed for over 1.5 years, Conor. Yeah, and that could be in Orlando. But time is closing in. But I'm very confident we see Eubank Ben in December. We've had a couple of offers from international sites, but I want to do the fight in the UK. I want to do it outdoors in the UK, and hopefully we can get it done.
Last one from me, Devin Haney, Regis, Prograis. We were hearing talks of a December date. Have we got any other information on that? Because we see a lot of back and forth on Twitter between people, but we've not seen anything come to fruition.
I hope that fight is imminent, and I think it is. December looks like the date, early December. Tremendous fight, just securing the venue now. Regis has signed, and Devin hasn't, but not for any particular reason other than we were waiting on the site and the venue. Now we have it, and we're ready to go, and hopefully he signs this week.
Las Vegas?
No. An interesting one.
Middle East then?
No, in America. In America.
Okay, well, you're going to reveal that or
no,
not?
Definitely not. Till when we announce.
Eddie Hearn, thanks for talking to Boxing Social. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.